In the morning, today was fairly interesting because I had two options since I woke a little bit late. Either I could go to a McDonald's with my mom and take this as a get out of jail free card to not cook breakfast and get some free quick egg McMuffins, or cook breakfast and to consider time. I only had about a few minutes, which was about 30, and I did not think that was enough time to be able to marinate my food and then cook it. So I chose the easy path this time to the McDonald's path, but unfortunately, I did not have any English muffins on me, so I just used some whole grain bagels, that I have, but eating egg McMuffins on the bagels as I was heading to school did not stick right with me, especially since I was in a hurry, so I just chose not to instead. So I got to school anyway, and one major thing that I have right here is a social one. For 20 minutes straight, I was again hesitating because there's this one specific group I wanted to join, but I think as I kept hesitating, well, natural social dynamics moved around, and by the time that I came back, most people eventually broke off into smaller groups that would make socialization a little bit harder. But even in the baseball metaphor, I had like my own social fear was growing, and I know that I was going to lose this one since I kept wasting so much time for about like 20 minutes. So unfortunately, I let my own fear score against me 1-0, metaphorically. But all in all, since it was getting pretty hot, it is so summer. I decided to abandon my mission and just take a relaxation break at the cafeteria because the outside was very hot and I'd end up burning myself. Tomorrow, I fix this fear by fixing my sleep schedule and getting to school earlier. But also, if I want to show up, I gotta go immediately to stop them from going. In this case, I would call this second strikeout, metaphorically. I think it wasn't even about the friend group at that point. It was just like the internal battleground between fear and action. And temporarily, I did meet with James for something, but I eventually left. Today is the Spanish 3 class for period 1, and I saw on the board folder, decks, syllabus, a Canvas tutorial, and an activity for 1,000 common verbs. My teacher did her introductions in Spanish, and she announced things that we did over the weekend, transitioning to announcing a new assignment. Thereafter, she also announced password changes, saying that they are very unique due to an admin change, handing us papers along the way in case we forget what it is. Later was the syllabus, and her talks about it that there is no extra credit. Work boletos are worth 10%, homework is 20%, and no cheat sheets are allowed. She said grades are rounded to zero point 0.5 instead of whole numbers, so she also announced week folders that go along with that in case we're absent. And that if the absence is not excused, and apparently the school has some sort of thing with this, she might not accept that work, but she'll still try her best to do so. But she will accept half credit at the end for work that is late. And she said water is only allowed, no food, and mostly all the bureaucratic stuff along with a classroom of Canvas introduction. We're given those 100 verbs in common that we have to translate to English. Some of mine I also added the Italian variants, such as venire, venire, or empezar to cominciare. And the conversational pitches in this case of the first period, only 10 pitches, but these are required by the teacher in saying like the Spanish word means, and then my partner says it back to me, which is good as a conversation starter, but does not offer more than being an assignment by its own nature. Class did make a few funny remarks, but I still don't remember exactly. For English 2, and English 3 in period 2. My teacher also said that too at the same time as I entered the class that we'll also learn MLA and we'll be learning major formats. She passed us that paper to help glue to our notebook as a guideline sheet. And in the time being, I did my basic introduction and I initiated my own icebreaker to the people around me since we moved. Sadly, there was a seating chart and the teachers ended up moving us back to just randomized in that case. But the funny thing is that there was one kid who said, this guy's already destroying something. As there was this one a friend of theirs who went up to their phone caddy as the seats were rearranged, but the phone caddy ended up being messed up and there was something that was going on with the paper clip. But anyways, the second paper that the teacher gave us was a guideline for a soapstone prompt and the teacher teaching us about essay writing. The next she gave are the transition ones and there was a yellow paper. She said she'll teach us that later on, but then I glued that to my notebook. Later then I whispered if someone needed my scissors, but they said no. Later, now the teacher emphasized on other points and concise wording from introductory words such as very. She also says we do not use you and your. An example of you'll enjoy it, as said in an essay, changes to others can enjoy it. She also rambled about English test scores last year and how excellent our performance might be later too once we get to CASP testing. And she also emphasized on the hows of things and not just the actions that happen. And I might use these guides in my actual videos as appear to have a utility. The next sheet again was more grammar advice and short answer for another tutorial required, which is called RACE, the acronym for short answer prompts. We glued all of these to the paper, except a few because she emphasized that we do have to write on a few. The next one was also another true acronym paper and learning of a claim versus a fact to sway an opinion. She said that we will do this, the majority of writing in class, and we might also do practice sometime, and for us to get into transitions too, in terms of changing topics and provide complex answers. She said occasionally we might do warm ups, but asked us in a professional tone how to restate and remain on topic. An example is summer is a bad season. Why? Summer is a bad season due to, and then later on, she added the cite evidence importance and kept reminding us is that if we're not given one, then we should just make an example ourselves. We might get called for citation errors or plagiarism. The next letter E, which would stand for evidence, and she said we must explain it explicitly as if the reader knows absolutely nothing. In essays, she says we'll practice a lot of these a lot, and I also asked others how it was for them in terms of understanding it, but they're mostly vague, such as like, yeah, I shall explain it tomorrow, and yes, mostly for everyone else. And for the bottom of this second, in terms of the baseball metaphor, we just do two basic fastballs of like, how are you? What do you think of this? But no base runs as no one really asked questions back here. The score is 2-2, but no base runs on my side. Year 3, I met some older teachers before I went to class, and I did some basic introductions with my hello. I saw Rayon and a few others, and I know Rayon got into Miss his classes in math, so I wonder how he's going to be there. But for a few others, but it was mostly brief. Today was a new seating chart in my class, so I sat with 2 girls and 1 boy. The teacher continued doing his introductions and the announcements of another bureaucratic password change, along with other things he has to announce. Every Monday, he says we're going to he will assign us Casper reviews and tests that we will need to learn before we actually get to state testing. And he says it is due every Friday and is mostly a low baller assignment. He said for us to introduce us to each other while we do this in our new tables. And the first was about finding the slope, identifying points, and finding basic patterns on the number table. And in case we forgot, I got confused eventually in terms of the graph line and trying to copy it, but I managed to do it. For graphs and the rise and the run, I have to middle click a point, continue, and then click that point again, and then connect it to the graph itself. So I was confused, but I finished these sections faster once I understood it, and I stopped the parabola sections at 60% done. The next was another student amplify activity, answering for observations about a class and domain range. The problem was non-linear one, and the aligned segments had incorrect shading, which had to be corrected. And he helped me catch up in terms of this, since I was all stuck on the first slide on the Chromebook. But eventually, we covered more examples. Another example was a non-linear line. -5 is greater x is less than 90. The answer was nonlinear, and also the teacher announced another thing regarding classroom manager app that allows teachers to see complex students. One was confused on range and getting inequality signs, as I heard, but they ended up finishing a little late. But later, the teacher said for the entire class that this is not for homework. Since this was more of a game review, we are not going to be doing this, but rather the only other assignment was a cast review itself, which is always due Friday. The score here is 0-0 in the baseball metaphor, as I still didn't talk to anyone. Today, period 4, the teacher announced for us to go do some papers for an assignment and work before the actual bureaucratic stuff that we have to do that are required. I joked to Tad that she cut in front of Sky and 5 other people as we passed to get these other papers. And the teacher says for her syllabus that she'll be merciful for us as a science class, especially in terms of coming late, because this is a science class, and she also metaphorized very important rules such as, oh no, missing Lego piece from this set, now it's all going to fall, noting the importance that we have to follow this given rule in science. We have to wear goggles. And she essentially verbatim said the safety regulations, but then again, another TA arrived, but the teachers told her to go and leave. She said there was another old story regarding these glass hazards with Nico M. He apparently had glasses on his head and messed up. She had to do something for some teacher credentials for her to actually pass years ago, and she has to have the class do a lab for 45 minutes straight, and it has to be an unedited video that she has to send. It turns out Nico M did not follow one of these rules, and she had to scrub the footage trying to remove every single piece of him, or have to do the entire thing again. She says that apparently she still has something on him today. Not like a physical grudge, but more of like a, you did this to me, come on, bruh. And as for the rules, she said fire extinguisher is near the door, fire alarm is outside. And she says if we don't use our quote unquote super sexy goggles, then we'll have to use the Eyewash station. And she says that since a lot of these are microbially cleaned, and one of the funny things is that you still have a strong smell to them from the last cleaning. And apparently there was a substitute before that she had years ago who apparently wanted to test the Eyewash. And when they pulled the thing a little too hard, it apparently shot to the ceiling. It was pretty funny, as she said. And another funny thing is that she apparently calls the storeroom the a-hole. But it was another storm. We went through it, and I saw a lot of bookshelves and showers for that chemical danger in case we did something. And I asked her if I could plant something, but she only said later on once we actually get to the garden. The teacher then showed us other things to staple, such as the syllabus modifications that are due, along with class changes across the school that we might have to be aware for. We must also turn it in on point 2. The thing that I have for this is a quick reminder for period 1 is a syllabus, period 2 is a syllabus, period 3 is math, syllabus is also for period 4, science regulations, and another secondary online syllabus. Next was gluing 3 papers, the rules, the grade rubric, and the unit cover page. We were given the last 10 minutes to do so. The class was mostly loud at this point, but I was not able to walk or talk or go further with the work assignment. And a funny thing is that as I heard people speak out, a guy seemed adamant in his own table to ask a girl out, but he said that his conversations with her haven't been going pretty well. Like she keeps veering off track, so he might ask her out, and apparently if she says no, he will go back to Alaska and train more and disappear. But I don't know. For lunch period this time, I'm calling this a strikeout because I did hesitate a little bit. And there are a lot of people in the lunch lines and bench tables, so that took a little bit. But nonetheless, I found a seat to sit in and a place to be. But unfortunately, again, I did try to nudge the 2 people in front of me and politely ask to speak to them. But sadly, they did not budge as much as, and they seemed a little bit aloof, so to speak. Again, I know a lot of people want to pass the time, but I still do thank them pretty much for offering me a free seat. But to put on the mini ABS challenge on the spot, I think I'm going to call this a strikeout because our goal was to talk to people, but I think I call this unlucky because they were actually watching something on their phones and they were all on their AirPods. I wanted to talk to them, but unfortunately they implied a heavy no. I think because there's so many people that are focusing in the loud quad and I'm also paying my attention here, I remained unable to speak to them ultimately, even though I still did my basic practice of like asking what's your name, how's your day. But I know there's still kind people at the end, and I know I'll just call myself a little bit unlucky here. But the score here is 0-0. To note, to modify the baseball metaphor, I do put successful pitches as a score and a run for the other side. If they answer, and even if a conversation is bad, the scorecard represents that they still answered back proportionally. So if they don't answer back or I don't, it will clearly show me or the other side in terms of the score increase or decrease. Usually we want the other team to win in physical baseball, but in the social baseball metaphor, both teams have to win equally. They have to drive the score up in that matter. But for period 5, today was history, and I heard that today we have to turn in the syllabus along with placing phones in the phone catties, and similar to science class last year, using our own digital notebook and essential questions. The bell work the teacher titled that we have to do is basically a quick introduction on a random piece of Google Slides, and make sure to answer the basics like I like this because, I enjoy this because, but then we had to present to our classmate partners by reading the Google Slide to them. They were mostly fond and most people were kind. These prompts were mostly basic and talking about like who we are as people and every day. But today we continued doing history notes and we did a unit workbook to help us organize our things online, and the notes were in Google Slides, so we started off from there. We also watched a misconception video where some Native American girls dismissed some American misconceptions, and we had to write some things we found interesting about it down on our notebooks and why we think that way. But the teacher made us write it out. We also learned about the 3 G's in the coming of exploration, from gold to country glory and to God. We're not able to finish these notes as sadly time ran out. As for the conversational pitches, I guess I could say I threw one fastball, how's it going, and one slider emphasizing on a given point in the introduction directly to my friends and I. But I will also say, like, my teacher also made me pitch to the class in terms of speaking out loud to everybody, but I wouldn't count that as a pitch, although technically it is. This is mostly guided. And then also 10 basic sliders for those guided introductions that we had to say to each other. But as for period 6, I reached on time, although the weather was a little bit hot. The teacher announced a paper activity, and for orthographic projection, we learned that with an object depicted on a surface mapped using a parallel line project onto a plane. And basically, we're doing this old school where we're writing on paper, and we know in future assignments we might be writing on paper and drawing, and then copying that directly to the computer. And this was more of a physical lesson today, kind of the lecture on board compared to a computer. So today was mostly kind of that drawing stuff in 2D. Later, we practiced drawing random pieces from a board test. I struggled and I hurried trying to draw them. I also missed out on shading them and putting them into the correct 3D form. The class was mostly loud today, and I don't really have much to say. But one guy asked me about Aurora, and I told him she's back here in the school, but temporarily went back a year ago to apparently help some kids in her home country. And in terms of my friend tag, I think mostly basic fastballs, such as how's your day, and some lowballer jokes, such as someone's gonna use these tweezers on your eyebrows. And he reciprocated back proportionally with some other jokes. 10 fastballs, we'll just leave it as it is. Interaction is very easy with him. As for the bureaucratic stuff post school today, I did have to fill it all out. It took me about 15 minutes, especially with that online syllabus and having to turn in, email my own syllabus on paper, email it to my school email, open up my school email. That takes time. Then pull out the picture and have to rename it and then turn it in. That takes a long time. And as for the pitches today, unfortunately, as I said, we struck out twice, one during lunch and one during the morning, but we did score most of our basic fastballs. And best improvement I could do today is simply keep showing up. That is really it.